Hey everyone, blessings and welcome. In this video, I will be discussing religious hypocrites, in particular, religious hypocrites in the Christian faith. But before we get started, I want to invite you to become a subscriber to this channel if you're not already one. Definitely share this video if you like what I'm doing over here. I have a bunch of other videos that you can watch and share as well. Definitely hit that like button because it helps me out, and feel free to drop me a comment. It'll be great to get some dialogue going, especially around this topic. I'm interested in what you have to say. Yeah, so let's get into it. Let's talk about the hypocrite. I think now more than ever, I'm getting the question, especially from unbelievers, about the state of the church and also why there are so many religious hypocrites. And I think this question is coming up more and more, especially from people outside of the faith, because now more than ever, we are seeing many prominent pastors and bishops and people that are part of these huge and massive mega church ministries with these enormous platforms, people who have been in ministry for decades and for many years. We're seeing them getting caught up in scandal. Not all of them, but some really prominent ones for sure. So we're seeing the scandals. We're seeing churches break up. We're seeing these big time people step down, and even some pastors and bishops being kicked out of their churches because of their activities and their behavior and the things that they've been engaging in, and just them being hypocrites. So people have questions, and I don't blame them. And for those of us who are a part of the faith and who do go to church, I would say it's very disappointing. I know I'm disappointed, but at the end of the day, obviously, not all of us are hypocrites. I will argue that most people who go to church aren't hypocrites. And these are people who are serious about their faith, and they're trying their very best to get closer to God and to get their lives together and, to be good people. That's what I see from my point of view. And I know there's some of you and many of you out there who would agree with me. However, there are some hypocrites, and we do have a problem with hypocrites. And unfortunately, these are the people who are in a church that the spotlight gets shined on, and then, it'll be a good excuse for people to point their fingers at Christians and say, see, I knew you all were fake and phony. It's not all of us, but we do have to talk about the hypocrites. So that's what I'm going to do in this video. And just know that when it comes to this particular topic, I think the hypocrite is very layered and there's some nuance to it. So yeah, let's examine the religious Christian hypocrite. So yeah, let's get into it. So number one, just know that in general, there are going to be people who come to church for the wrong reasons, and these are the hypocrites, right? People come to church, and I've mentioned this in other videos, they don't have good intentions, unfortunately, right? They come to church to run a scam, to run some sort of con, because they know, especially predatory people, they know that there's many vulnerable people in a church. There's people who come to the church that need healing. They're trying to get their lives together. They're going through something, and the church can be a very vulnerable space, and it's easy prey for the predators. So they'll come in, and they'll put on a mask, and they'll be something that they're really not, because they have for nefarious reasons. Because they have some sort of wicked agenda, and they either want to take money or take advantage of people, or harm people in some sort of way. And some people actually they come in, they want to start some sort of a cult. I've talked about this in another video. So there's people who want a cult following, and it's they come into the church, like I said, it's a vulnerable space, and if someone who's very charismatic, have a magnetic personality, who can fake really well, And, so these counterfeit people, they'll come in, these snakes in the pulpit, they'll come and they'll run a good game on people who don't know any better, or people who, are struggling in certain areas. So they know what to say. They know what to do because, you have some people who are professionals at this stuff. So these are the people who will do a thing, say they have a set of moral standards that are Christian standards of morality, and they'll be living a life completely contrary to that because they were fake and phony and frauds from the get-go, because they came into the church with an agenda. So just know that in general, there are going to be people that show up in church just for the wrong reasons, and they can be labeled and classified as hypocrites. So unfortunately, they show up and, and they do damage, at times, but just know that they're hypocrites in the church because people just, they have bad intentions when they come. So everybody's not there for the right reasons. So like I said, there's layers to this thing. And another person, or another, type of hypocrite that I've seen is the people who make an idol out of religion. These are people who are very legalistic in their faith walk, right? So they got the religious part down, the following of the rules, right? They got that down to a T, at least on the outside, right? Because what makes them a hypocrite is that they're enforcing the rules and regulations and of the Bible and of the doctrine of, whatever denomination that they're a part of, or even the code of conduct within the church community. Right. They're the main, I call them the clipboarding Christians, right? They're checking off the list of who's doing what in the church. Right. And they're the ones who are living a life that's completely contrary to that. And they're breaking rules, when they get home. So yeah, these people, they've got these are just religious people. So there's people who are going to come in, they're good at, once again, wearing the mask and putting on, the airs of piety, of being, this good, upstanding, religious Christian person, right? But they're fake. They're fake. They just got the religious part down, right? They got the look down. They got, the Christian jargon down, right? But, for those of us who really know and who's actually really been in the faith for a while, it takes a transformation through the Spirit, through the Holy Spirit, to really change as a person. And many of these people haven't had that, that spiritual experience. So these are religious people who haven't had a true spiritual conversion and experience. So it's possible, and I have seen it myself with my own two eyes, for people to be coming to church for years and for decades. They got they're just religious, but they haven't had a true conversion. So these are the people who are very, very prone to becoming hypocrites, because they just got the belief part down. They got that down, but they haven't truly tapped into their divine nature. They haven't truly been transformed by the Spirit of God. They don't truly have a grapple and a hold on the fruits of the Spirit, right? And because the law and the following of rules is only going to take you but so far, right? And wherever it takes you, it's going to leave you there, right? So, for example, I knew a man in the church. He had a leadership position. This is when I was like a preteen, right? This guy, he would just be constantly watching the women, right? With the length of women's skirts, right? So he would be the first person to, for those of us who grew up in a holiness church, you know what the sheet is and what the leg covering is, right? So a woman goes to sit down and her skirt is a little too short, the usher would come and with a sheet or with a cloth to cover up, to, add some length to that, so the woman's legs wouldn't be exposed, right? That's old school, right? So he would be the one, which was, I think, in my opinion, in hindsight, this is completely inappropriate, who would be putting the cloth on or the sheet on a woman's leg. I think another woman should be doing that, to be honest, right? But he was really policing what the women were wearing. Now I know why he was doing that, because he was struggling with lust. And I think because he thought if he can enforce that rule enough, that it would help him to control his lust. But it didn't work because he eventually left the church and, decided to live how he wanted to live, right? So the law and, the legalism, because, the law is good. It's good to follow rules and regulations because they're like guidelines and parameters for our faith. But I'll say it again, as I've said in other videos, religion is just a vehicle to get us to our spiritual destination, right? It's not the entire journey, right? It's not it, right? So we need to be growing spiritually. So these people are prone, the super religious people who haven't had that true spiritual conversion, they're very, very prone to becoming hypocrites because they don't have enough of the Spirit of God in them to really help them with their struggles, right? They can't tap into that divine nature, which actually gives us the power to overcome the things that we struggle with. And that power comes from God and not ourselves. That power comes from God and not rules and regulations. So these people really struggle. So yeah, these people are, they could be classified or become hypocrites for sure. Also, I think the people in the church who refuse to acknowledge their shadow. So number 3, the people who refuse to acknowledge their shadow. So the shadow part of us is the dark part of us. We all have that side of us that's not so great. The parts of our character that's not wonderful. The things that we struggle with, whether it be anger, anxiety, lust, stealing, gossip, whatever your vice is, we all have a vice. That's part of the shadow. Part of the shadow is not only the things that we struggle with and the things that we have to deal with. That's that might be part of our personality. The not so great things within our personality, right? That's not particularly pleasing to God. But it could also be the things that actually happened to us that wasn't our fault, like some trauma, bad memories. So it can also be in the shadow, the baggage. So basically it's anything, the shadow is really anything that's holding you back in life from reaching your true potential in God and spiritually or just in life in general, right? The thing that could be holding you back from connecting to God in an authentic and real and true way. So the things that hold us and that actually creates a barrier between us and God, that's part of that shadow, and that has to go. So the people who do not acknowledge their shadow, the people who pretend, that they don't have a problem, with unforgiveness, that they don't have a problem with their mouth, that they don't have a problem with, the things that they've been thinking or whatever the situation is. These are the people who are also prone to becoming hypocrites, right? Because whatever you don't deal with, it's going to deal with you after a while, right? So you cannot, or we cannot overcome what we refuse to acknowledge. And that's the problem with people who don't acknowledge their shadow, And there's even a group of people that I'm seeing more and more. There's a few prominent pastors who are no longer pastors, who are now atheists or agnostic, and they've completely left the church, and they had some pretty sizable ministries, and they've turned away from the faith. And I've had people ask me, well, how can a person do that? And I've even asked the question to God, and even to myself, like, how did that happen? You're supposed to be this person of the faith, and now that's because they haven't dealt with doubt, and doubt is in the shadow, right? So, there's the type of doubt where it could lead you to, you're doubting something, you're questioning something, right? And it could lead you to enlightenment. And then there's a type of doubt that will lead you to confusion. So this is the type of doubt that I'm dealing with right here. The type of doubt that leads you to confusion and that will turn you away from God. So even doubt is in the shadow. So the people who were once in the faith and who have left, they didn't deal with the doubts that they had, right? So part of the problem that I have seen in the Christian church is that, people come in, they join, or maybe they were like me, they grew up in a church, or they had a family member or a parent that was a pastor or something like that, like a PK kid, and they've always been a part of that community, and they just thought that this is just the way that things are supposed to be, and they never truly questioned things. And I think it's good to question things and question what you believe. And I know in the Christian faith we don't leave a lot of room for that because people are afraid to question what we believe. And this is how these things happen, and they don't properly deal with their issues and with their struggles, because they feel like ashamed about it. There's a shame that goes along with it. And, people feel like if other folks find out that I'm dealing with this thing, then they may think I'm this awful person, and they're going to reject me, or maybe even kick me out of the church. Right. So we all want to be accepted. So they want to be accepted, and they don't want to be rejected. And they're afraid to question certain things that they don't understand, or they might not quite believe, or they have questions about. So instead of properly dealing with it and confronting it head on, they put on a mask and they pretend like they're not struggling with the thing, or they pretend like it's not happening, or those things, or even the baggage that they have that is not there. And eventually what happens, these people, they begin to crack and pull apart at the seams, right? Because you can't stay in that state. So it's important. This is a big lesson for all of us, especially for those of you out there, and even for me, who are, in the faith, that we have to continually confront our shadow and bring those things up to the Lord, because it's through the power of God that we overcome the things that we struggle with, that we overcome the things that are inside of us that's not that great, the things that are part of the fleshly, carnal, sinful nature, right? And when we give those things and we turn those things and we surrender those things over to God, then we can overcome them. But if you ignore them and you act like it's not there, and you rather put on a mask of piety, like you're some saint or this great person, who's so good you don't have to confront the things that you're struggling with, you're not going to make it. You're not going to make it. So yeah, the people who refuse to acknowledge their shadow and deal with their stuff, and there's a lot of work that we have to do. You just don't get saved and you just don't come to the Lord and that's it, and you become this perfect person. It's a process. And to the day you leave this earth and to the day you die, it's an ongoing process in your spiritual journey of being sanctified, of being cleaned up, of making mistakes and learning from them, hopefully, and getting back on track, right? That's going to happen too. We're all going to make these mistakes. We're going to mess up. We're going to ask God for forgiveness, and we get back on track, because nobody, especially me, we're not perfect. And this is what these people are afraid of not being seen as perfect, right? They put on this persona of perfection. They want to be seen as in a certain way, right? So, maybe it's hubris, maybe it's arrogance. I don't know. Maybe it's narcissism. Who knows? But yeah, but you have to confront that shadow, And finally, just want to leave you with this. There's layers to the hypocrite. Folks come to church for wrong reasons. They are very legalistic. They make an idol out of religion, and they don't confront the shadow. But just know that through God and with God, we can overcome and overpower the shadow or anything that's in our way. And we have to basically be rooted and grounded in the power of God and be connected to God. And as long as we have that strong connection, and as long as we confront our problems head on and we turn it over to God, we'll be less likely to be, hypocritical, And just because you make a mistake, that doesn't make you a hypocrite. Living the lie and continuing in the lie and being something you're not, and saying that you're living a certain way and you're not living a certain way, that's what makes you a hypocrite. Being imperfect doesn't make you a hypocrite. We mess up, we make a mistake, we ask God for forgiveness, and we move on, and we don't go back to that thing, right? So that's what I wanted to share with you in this video, why there's so many religious hypocrites. Those of you out there who are already in the church, be real to yourself, do the very best that you can, and God will bless you. Take care, God bless, and I will see you in the next video.